Do you want to know the difference between a nice, nicer, and top quality surf boat? We're going to break down the terms fit and finish and tell you what they actually mean, as well as what you might actually want to look for when you're looking around at a new surf boat. Come with us and we'll break it all down. All right, so we're going to cut through the fluff and get down to the nitty-gritty of what ends up making a difference in the fit and finish and quality of your boat. First, we're going to talk about the materials that are going into it. What are the actual components that are going into the boat and what makes one boat higher end than another one as far as the materials. The second is we're going to talk about the design and craftsmanship that goes into the boat. How is a boat designed and put together in such a way to make it so it's going to provide an elevated experience and so it's just going to last longer and have better quality over the course of time that you have the boat. The third thing that we're going to talk about is going to be refinements that are dialing in on the boat. In other words, just little niceties and pieces, whether that be minor features or just slight changes and adjustments they made to make it just a little bit nicer. And you see as we go from the good to the better to the best scenario, how in each one of these categories, the quality of materials, the design and craftsmanship, and the refinements that are going throughout the boat, that you see that they will stair step and elevate as we go across. Now, in some of these different categories, the different boats that we have here are going to be the same. There's some areas where the Supreme and the Centurion are basically on the same level. There's other areas where the Axis and the Supreme are on basically the same level. We're going to point those out, but basically give you an idea of when you're going to pay a little bit more for a boat or when you're going to want to get something a little bit nicer and a little higher quality, what you are actually getting, what the bang for your buck is. So let's first dive into the quality of the materials that go into each one of these different surf boats and show you how they compare against one another and what makes each one different. All right, guys, we are now on the inside of the Centurion RI, and the very first thing I wanted to talk about in here is in regards to the thing that is the most apparent item when you climb into the inside of the boat that covers most of the interior, and that is the vinyl and the seating that runs through each one of these boats. Now, we're here in the Centurion RI, but the easiest way to really compare these is actually probably to grab a cushion from each boat and just compare the actual cushion materials and the design and makeup of them to show you the differences between those different components in a nice boat, a nicer boat, and in the nicest of the three that we're looking at. So in comparison, first off, I've got the bow fill cushion. So this is the center cushion out of the bow. First off, out of our nice boat with the Axis T23. Second one is the bow fill cushion out of the Supreme S240. And then the third one is the bow filler cushion out of the Centurion RI. Between those three different cushions. Now, there's a few things I want to talk about in regards to vinyl and upholstery. The first one is the makeup of the vinyl itself. The second one is the makeup of the actual seat cushion, the internal guts of the seats. And then the third one is the way they're put together and blended using the different stitching and things like that go into it. So the first thing to talk about is the actual cushion itself. Now, you can see there's a few differences between each one of these different cushions. You have the good fit and finish boat over here on this side that you can tell it's different size than the other two, but the length and width don't necessarily matter that much. That's more just the design of the bow, and an Axis T23 has a smaller bow design than a Supreme S240 does, as an example. So that's not really much of a factor when we're talking about quality, but the thickness of the cushion really is. So when you're looking at them, that hopefully you guys can check out and see, when you set them right next to each other, you can see that the nicer option is a lot thicker than our base option that we have right here. It's a significantly thicker cushion overall. Now that's due to two different components. That's due to the actual guts of the inside, the foam that sits on the inside of the cushion. And the second one is a material that we refer to as top coat. And what top coat is it's the actual layer that wraps around the base. It's the top vinyl, but it's not just this top vinyl that you see. It actually incorporates a foam layer that sits underneath of it that wraps around the internal foam cushion to create the entirety of the cushion that you see in front of you. And depending on how thick that top layer is, it's going to lead to a cushion that is significantly, not just thicker, but it's a lot higher quality. It's a more difficult cushion to make, quite frankly, because there's a lot more material that they have to wrap around than they have to sew, but it leads to a cushion that's just going to hold up significantly better. Now, in talking about top coats between the different brands, Axis doesn't publish the numbers as far as how thick their top coats are, but a standard top coat on most boats, not necessarily saying this particular one, but on most boats that are out there is about 5 millimeters in thickness. It's you know, about, it ends up being about 1/4 of an inch thick. On the other side, you have the Supreme and the Centurion that I've got right here that are very similar to one another as far as the quality of the vinyl goes. They're running a 17 millimeter top coat, so they're a little over 3 times as thick of the material that wraps around. Now, that thick top coat material is going to lead to, if you have a thicker top coat, it leads to a seat that is not going to develop indents that stay in the boat. So if you have somebody sitting on a seat cushion and they stand up from it, how long is it going to take for that seat to go back to its original shape? The thicker that top coat is and the more robust it is, the quicker it's going to return to that shape, and the less likely it is to conform to the way the shape of somebody's bottom that they're sitting on over a long period of time. That's going to lead to seat cushions that hold up a lot better. They don't develop wrinkles and creases in the vinyl as easily. They're also not going to develop like pools of water that sit under the seats on the inside, and they're just going to lead to less tearing and abrasion and the seats coming apart. So they're just going to hold up a lot nicer overall. So that's kind of piece number one. The second thing to talk about is the actual foam guts on the inside. As you can tell, the difference between these two boats, the one is a lot thicker than the other, but it also has to deal with what materials are on the inside. As you go to nicer boats, they typically go to higher quality foams and different layers of density. As an example, on the Centurion RI right here, this is a tri-density foam material, meaning it's got a heavier density foam on the bottom, a mid-grade density foam in the middle, and a softer grade density foam on the top. This leads it to be a soft, comfortable cushion, but also one that's not going to break down and going to bottom out when you sit in it when it's a hot, nice day and you're out on the water with your family. It's going to just lead to something that's going to hold up nicer and be better, but also be more comfortable over time. There's a lot of boats that are on the lower end of the spectrum that they're comfortable boats to sit in when it's in a showroom or when it's brand new, but a year or two or more down the line, the seats have a tendency to bottom out and they're too soft and you just hit against the hard plastic that's on the bottom of the cushion. On the other hand, when you go to a higher grade density foams, that doesn't take place. These seats cushions will be really nice to sit on 10 years from now. Think of this in comparison to like a really high grade quality mattress or furniture that you get, whether it's in your office or in your home. As you go to higher grade furniture, they go to higher grade foam densities, higher grade top coats that they wrap the stuff in. It's just a much higher and nicer way of building just any kind of product that you're going to be sitting on and you're going to be enjoying in the comfort of your home, or in this case, in the comfort of your boat. The last thing to talk about when we're talking about upholstery is the way that they're put together and pieced together between the different cushions. You can see here we have a single stitch seam that runs across on the sides. You also have a single stitch seam that runs across for this accent panel that runs through the middle. As you go to the higher end options, you have stitching that is going to go to a triple stitch seam going around the sides, and then dual stitch seams going through other areas of the cushion. This is going to hold up a lot better and is going to be more resistant to breakdowns, which is the most common thing that we see on boat interiors, where you have a place that somebody will step with their foot. This area here on the seam takes a lot of stress, and that's the first thing that starts to typically blow or tear out when you're needing to replace a boat interior. When you go to a triple stitch seam, it's much less likely to blow out than a single stitch or even a double stitch. And so it's just going to hold up significantly better. So that when you go to a higher end, that ends up being the case. The next thing to talk about is the actual geometrical shape of the cushions themselves. And so you can see from our good option, this is shaped almost exactly like a rectangle. It's really 90-degree geometrical angles going on the sides, of the corners, everything of that nature. As you go to our nicer option, you're still maintaining some of those geometrical angles, but it's wrapped around a little bit more. Some of that is because you don't have hard seams running across the sides, which is a little more difficult way to build a seat cushion, but it leads to higher quality overall cushion because you don't have seams on the highest grade stress points along the side rivets here. So that's a component that is something to talk about. The last one is when you go to the highest end option, you end up having a cushion that is blended and rounded much nicer. So this is just a higher quality level of attention to detail and craftsmanship. As the seat cushions are more rounded, they're just a little more comfortable to sit on, a little nicer, more plush, that they're not hard angles that you see in the two more basic options. The last thing that I wanted to discuss is the actual material that the stitching is made out of. As you go from good, better to best, the higher grades boats have higher grade stitching, all the way up to in the case of the Centurion RI, we are running a stitching from the company Gore called Gore Tenera thread. This is the same company that does Gore-Tex type stuff, and the stitching that they do in like Gore-Tex coats or really high-end pants or outerwear. This is the same kind of stitching that we're running on here, the Gore Tenera threading, which is going to be UV resistant, waterproof, abrasion resistant, all of those different things. Just make it so it holds up better over time, and so that your boat is as nice 5 years from now as it is the day that you purchased it. So those are the different things that you can end up looking at when you're looking at the vinyl on the inside of the boat. And you can see as you go from good to better to best that you do definitely see a difference as far as the interior materials that go into the seat cushions themselves. Now let's look at a couple other components on the inside of the boat to see how the different boats will compare against one another, and some things that you can look at as far as those materials. As we look at the other different components and items on the boat and the different materials that they're made out of, there's a few things to point out that's going to be the differences between things such as your good boat and the better boat. Now, some of these are things such as the different little items and components that run through and what they're made out of. As an example, we've got the through-hole fittings that are sitting here, that are the ballast vent holes that exist here on this Axis T23. These are plastic components. When you jump over to the higher end boats, they're either made out of stainless steel or they're made out of billet aluminum, just depending on what the different components are. These components can include items such as windshield brackets. They can include things such as cup holders that are on the inside, whether they're plastic cup holders or stainless steel cup holders, as well as a lot of other different components, from items that are on the dash to the armrest for the driver's seat to all of these different things, whether they're items that are made of plastic versus metal, or things that are done in plastic versus fiberglass, or in, even if both of them are plastic, if one of them is wrapped in vinyl versus one that is not. As you go from one that is plastic to one that's metal, the difference is fairly obvious. You have plastic components that will get brittle and break down over time, where you have metal ones that are just a lot more robust and hold up a lot better. And everything from, like, as an example, the through-hole fittings right here, when you have plastic ones, they're just more likely to be able to get damaged or broken than if you have one that is stainless steel. And so as you go through that, it's a bunch of little small items, but as you go throughout the boat, it can become a major factor when you're looking at all of them in combination at one time and how well that boat is going to hold up in the long run. Another thing that we can use to see an example of the difference in fit and finish is the flooring material that is run through the inside of the boat. Now, there's a lot of different flooring options on different boats, and what we've got here for the different options are the most standard ones that are put in a lot of these different boats. Now, and there's, on a lot of the more base level, lower end, or entry level towboats, they have options such as having no flooring material at all, that is just fiberglass has kind of got a rough texture to it that has no flooring inserted. Other ones have things such as snap-in carpet, or like a drop-in type material that's just a really, that's nicer than having no floor, but it's just a less expensive way and a more basic way of doing flooring. When you start getting into the higher end options that they do on something like the Axis, you have what they have as their soft grip floor, which is this foam flooring material that they put throughout the boat. So in this case, this is on the more basic level of what you get with a foam-based flooring. You have a single layer foam floor that's then got lines and things like that are running through it, but they're lines that are laser etched into the foam. They're not necessarily different layers or different densities of foam. You also have the foam material itself comes at like a sharp 90-degree angle as it's wrapping around, that's got a hard line edge that just is going to end up breaking down and not last quite as long as something that's more rounded and nice and flush. And the material itself just isn't quite as high a grade as when you go up to the nicer options. Let's jump over to the Supreme and check and see what they have as far as the nicer option on flooring, and then we'll go over to the Centurion. When we jump over to the Supreme, you can see that there's a few differences in the flooring that exists that we have here on the back swim platform. The first off is that as we go to Supreme, there's an upgrade in the material itself, which is going from just a standard basic grip foam flooring to Gator Step, and this is done by the company Gator Step, and it's really the highest quality flooring that is available on the market. As far as the material change, that's going to be the biggest difference going from our good boat to our nicer boat. And then when we take a step up to our best, most of the differences aren't on the material level, but actually on the refinement or the design level. Now, there are a few components in the design level that are nicer as well, such as we go from having a single layer of flooring to 2 layers of Gator Step here. We have a tan layer and then a black layer that sits up on top. This gives you a few additional niceties, such as the ability to select from a wide array of colors that are available. Doesn't necessarily impact the quality of the material, but it does impact the way that you feel and how you like it if you have the ability to select between multiple colors. In addition to that, you also have lines that are cut in and done, which just gives it an overall nicer aesthetic and a nicer feel. The last part is that it just adds to the higher level of quality. When you go to multiple layers, it's a thicker material that's just going to hold up better over time, and it's just going to be more nice and plush when you put your foot on it. The last thing to talk about is just the way, because of that additional thickness and refinement, the material itself just has a little different grip to it. That's a little grippier. It's a little more comfortable on your feet. It's just a nicer overall feel in the boat. Now let's jump over to the Centurion. I'll show you what happens when we take the Gator Step design in the Supreme up to the next level of our best finished boat. When we move over to our best finished boat, we see here we have a tri-layer Gator Step that exists. There's 3 different layers of Gator Step running through here, of which you can select the color on all 3 of the different layers independently. Going a step beyond that, there's a lot more contours and cuts and designs in this Gator Step, even going to the extent of having one panel that's this toffee color, another panel that's black, another panel that's black with the toffee outlines on the inside, and that kind of that checkerboard type pattern goes throughout the entire boat. Some people may not like this look in this design, but it gives you the ability to have this in the boat if you want to, which is not necessarily even an option on the mid-end tier boat, and particularly not on the low-end tier boat. The last thing to talk about here is that same lasering that we saw on our nice boat. You end up going through the entire interior of the boat and putting some different applications on the top of the Gator Step to provide some patterning and some just overall increased aesthetic. In this case, we have a wood grain panel running through all of the black on the inside of the Centurion, which is going to just enhance the overall look and design. Once again, this is not something you may necessarily even want to opt for in the boat. It is an option, but it is something that is available in the boats that have the best overall fit and finish. All right, we're now moving into the design and craftsmanship portion of the fit and finish discussion. We're going to start that discussion here in the Axis T23, our good fit and finish boat. Now, in running through and looking at, there's some things that I'm going to point out here that you may not have noticed before, but once I tell them to you, you're probably never going to be able to unsee them. When they're building a boat, the idea behind it is how they can manufacture and design and build a boat, particularly an entry-level price point boat such as this, to try to make it so it's manufactured as inexpensively and quickly as they possibly can. And that leads them to do a few different things that are a bit unique, as opposed to more complex manufacturing methods that we'll look at in just a minute. First thing that we can look at is all of the different seat cushions and pieces that go throughout the boat are singular pieces that are designed to basically attach on and fit, not necessarily fit with other components and pieces. I'll give you an example. Here on the side pieces on the boat, this cushion and this cushion and this cushion and this cushion and this cushion are all separate vinyl pieces that are fairly squared off in nature that they just wrap together and then either bracket on or piece or screw into the sides of the boat. Instead of doing a singular piece that, let's say, wraps around the side or particularly in the back corners that may be difficult that you can't see, instead of having a cushion that wraps and has contour and curvature going around, it's 2 pieces that are kind of bracketed and set together. The next thing that you have is that you have a lot of exposed fiberglass areas. So areas here on the sides, especially if you move up into the bow, they're individual cushions that are just attached onto the sides of the boat that don't have a lot of complex geometry to them, and it just makes it really easy and a lot less time consuming and less expensive to piece it together. You also have things like a lot of different plastic pieces and inserts running throughout the inside of the boat as you go from the back to the front, and the layout is very simplistic or simplified, meaning one big compartment for your cup holders, different spots that you have very clear open areas to put speakers into that are just really flat, flush designs. There's not a lot of curvature with either the fiberglass or with the interior. It's very squared off and kind of boxy shaped running through the inside. The main reason behind that is just it's a lot less expensive to manufacture a boat this way. It requires a lot less craftsmanship on the part of the people who are doing the interior design. You don't have to have workers who are nearly as experienced or nearly as skilled. And it just allows to have the boat interiors put together and built much faster on a faster streamline, as well as just less expensive to piece together in the first place. So those different things are going to be items that you'll see as you go throughout the boats, and we'll jump into the others and see how they compare. As we jump into our better finished boat, you see that there's some similarities to the first one we were looking at, but there's also some areas where it's definitely better and more refined. There's a lot less exposed fiberglass running through here. There's also a lot less plastic components all throughout. It's just a lot more nice fiberglass components, stainless steel, things of that nature that are running all throughout. In addition to that, there's a lot less of the exposed fiberglass panels and a lot more vinyl that is wrapping around everywhere. Instead of let's say this side piece composed of 4 different vinyl panels, we have it of a singular panel that goes and wraps all the way around. That's a much more complex piece to build. It's more complex to build, but it's also more comfortable. You don't have areas that you'd be sitting at, leaning back here, that are going to be just straight exposed fiberglass. Instead, it's a nice, comfortable seat cushion. In addition to that, the cushions have a lot more contours to them. They're more ergonomically comfortable. They just fit your body better, and they're just more comfortable seats to sit in overall. So the design going through them is just a little bit nicer all the way across. Now, there still are some exposed fiberglass panels. It's not as complex as the interior design of the best boat that we're about to jump into, but it's definitely a step up from what we were looking at previously. As we move into our best finished option, there you can see that we take all the things we discussed in the previous two, and they're just kind of taken to another level as we step inside of this Centurion RI. The interior is covered in really plush, thick, curved vinyl pretty much across the board. There's virtually no exposed fiberglass sitting along any of the seat panels. Everything is wrapped and covered in nice vinyl. That's in the cockpit as well as up in the dash area. You've also got things such as everything is covered in either gator step or vinyl or some other aspect. There's very, very little exposed fiberglass and gel coat here on the inside, which is really nice, particularly if you're stepping in any particular area. The last thing to notice and point out is how the curvature of all the cushions is just really nice and rounded and plush. The back seat wraps around and goes to the sides before transitioning to a separate panel. Same thing as you move up through on the inside of the boat, there's really complex wrap panels that have cutouts in areas for things such as speakers, cup holders, grab handles, things of that nature, but it just flows and is really smooth and fluid. It's not also visually appealing, it also is just more comfortable and nice and plush to sit in. Because of the high quality vinyl that's running through this boat, it's also going to hold up really well, so you're not having to worry about replacing this panel here on the side per se. In fact, to be totally straightforward, ever since they went to this vinyl in the year 2016, I don't think that we have replaced a single panel as a Centurion dealer. So this just gives you a good idea as far as the difference when you take fit and finish and elevate it to the next level. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to jump in and talk about each one of the different boats and the refinements that exist between them. These aren't necessarily fit and finish in the literal terms, but they're the things that a lot of different sales guys or different people within the industry will refer to when they're using the terms fit and finish. So they're things that we want to definitely talk about and identify between the different boats. Next up, we're going to take a look at the driver's seats, because that's going to be a big difference between a number of these different boats. So I'm sitting here in our good fit and finish boat, and this has got a driver's seat that isn't too bad. It's a little bit boxy and not super comfy, but it's a good spot that gives you a nice, good helm access and be able to drive and control your boat. One downside is it doesn't have a flip-up bolster or anything like that, so I'm sitting right here. So basically my options are I'm going to be sitting while I'm driving and cruising around, but if I happen to surf and I do things such as drop the wedge on this boat and fill the ballast, I'm going to be needing to stand up to be able to see over the front while we're surfing. So one nice thing that would be nice to have is having the flip-up driver's seat right here on this guy. As well as when you turn to the side, you kind of can turn to the side a bit like this, but it's a little bit more awkward, but it's not too bad of a design. So let's just go jump in the other boats and see how they compare as far as the captain's chair goes to this one. Now we jump into the Supreme. I'm sitting here in the captain's chair, and it's just a little bit of a step up from what we were experiencing in the last boat, since this is our better finished off boat. The next one that we have, a few different things to talk about here, is it's a little more comfortable, particularly when you turn to the side. It's got a nice notch. I can put my arm here on the side. It also has some backing as I turn to the side that I can sit back against, and it's just a little more comfortable. When I sit facing forward, it wraps around a little bit nicer, and it's not quite as boxy or hard. It doesn't have as many hard edge lines, so it's just a more comfortable overall seat to sit in. One other nice thing is it does have a flip-up bolster that's standard on this boat, so I can elevate up a little bit higher and see, which is really nice because in this Supreme, the bow stays down a little bit lower when you're surfing, so I can actually see over the front of the bow, sometimes without the bolster flipped up, but if there's nobody sitting in the bow and everyone's sitting back here towards the back, having the bolster flipped up gives me really clear visibility if I'm looking out and seeing, and I don't have to worry about standing up to be able to see over the bow. So just a few different nice things that are really great here in this boat that are a step up from our last one. Let's see what happens when we jump into our best boat and see what difference we have in the driver's seat. When we move into our best captain's chair, there's definitely a noticeable difference. First off, the chair is a lot nicer, more plush, more comfortable. It's just a lot better refined experience in how it's set up and how it hugs and holds to the curvatures of your person. The nice thing also is that I've had a lot of different people sit in this driver's seat, and it's really comfortable regardless of the person's size. In addition to that, you also have the ability to turn and move your leg into this notch here on the side, which is really comfortable to sit in if you're going to turn and face back towards the back or turn and face here to the side. It swivels and moves just like the others, and like the boat previous, it does have a flip-up bolster that sits here like this. However, in addition, you also have the option in this boat to be able to do a power driver's seat that powers up, such as this that you can see right here. So I can go up, and I can actually do 6 different ways of articulation and lean back or lean forward or move forward, back, things of that nature with this driver's seat. So it's really a step up in not just the overall quality of the seat and the comfort of it, but a lot of different features that are available with it as well. Last thing we're going to take a look at is the towers between the different boats. Now, this is an item that really has a big impact because you're going to be using your tower a lot. And so we're going to look at the different boats and see the different features and elements that they have, as well as how nicely each one is constructed. Now, here on our good fit and finish boat, we've got a tower that's fairly basic. It's all basically just a rough finished metal running across the entire thing, except for some different components in that are on it that are plastic. The board racks are very simple, that are bungee board racks. They do have an option where you can opt for clamping board racks on this guy. That would be a nice feature to step up to. And then the bimini basically just goes from here and moves forward. So it's not a ton of bimini coverage, but it is a tower that's going to do a great job and make it so you can surf behind the boat, you can wakeboard behind the boat, you can do all the stuff that you want to. Your tow point is right up here above us right here, and it ends up being something that has some pretty decent functionality. As far as folding the tower down, you have to unclip and open this piece on each side, and then there's this little item that you have to pop up in order to push and access it to get it down, to move this move this away to the side piece that opens up like that, and then you flip this open to each side on each area. You do that on this side, and you do it on the other side, and then the whole tower can tip and lean and move to be able to fold, so you can get it down low enough to go into a garage. So it does have some folding and collapsing capability, not quite as refined as what we're going to take a look at here in a second, but it'll get the job done for you pretty well. To move into our better finished boat, we are taking a look at the tower and some different things that really stand out. First off, the tower is this nice gloss finish. It's just a little bit nicer finish work on this one. It also has a little more robust design. You have a full panel going all the way up that has inserts that run down through that provide additional structure and rigidity to the tower. It's just a more solid overall design. If you grab and shake it back and forth, it's not going to flex or move as much as what we're looking at with our good fit and finish boat. You also have a few other different little refinements, such as lights that are built into the tower here at the base as well as up on the top of the tower, providing flood lighting to the inside. It's just a nice little accent. Going a step beyond that, in this boat, we have matching tower accent panels. We have gunmetal metal flake tower panels in the sides here to match the exterior of the boat, as well as we have higher-end board racks that run on the outside. These are board racks that are only available in the Supreme and in the Centurion brand boats, which are the bombshell board racks. You also have clamping board racks that are available, as well as a few other different options, including bungee board racks if you wanted to go with that basic option. But those will sandwich your board a little bit nicer than a standard clamping rack will, and not allow the board to slide or to come out of the rack. The last thing to talk about in regards to the tower is the bimini design setup with the tower. It's a lot larger bimini that covers a much larger area of the boat. This boat's a 24-foot boat, and it pretty much covers the entire inside. And that's an element that is going to be a step above what you experience in our baseline boat that we're looking at. The final thing to discuss with the tower is the way that it folds and maneuvers. In order to lower it, all you need to do is put a tool in, do a half turn on each side, and then the tower is unlocked. It can simply fold down, and it has a specific spot that will come down and rest upon in order to keep it down low to slide into your garage or into any other area that you need to get the tower under. So it's a little nicer design. It's fully weight assisted, so you can move it up and down with one hand, even if it's a fully loaded tower like this one that's got 4 tower speakers, bimini board racks, and all the rest. So just a nice little refinement that's a step above what we were looking at before. But let's jump over into our best finished boat to see what the highest end tower setup can look like. As we jump into our best finished boat, we have the Centurion with the drop zone power folding tower. This tower is definitely a step above the other ones that we've taken a look at in the fact that it can fold down with just the push of a button that's power folding. In addition to that, you have higher end board racks that are clamping and go and sandwich the racks just like the last ones we took a look at, but have additional features such as life jacket hooks and things of that nature. You also have full complete tower panels that sit in the sides here that match the outside of the boat that just add an element of refinement and look to the boat. In this case, bringing black metal flake from the outside of the boat to the inside in just a really nice way. Going a step even beyond that, you have a different design with the tower. So it's got this teardrop shaped design that's significantly stronger and more rigid than just a standard tubular design that we saw in the other two boats. Really, this is taking all the different elements we looked at with the other two and taking it up a notch to an entirely different level with an even higher end boat with a higher end refinements than the previous two we were looking at. That kind of wraps up the different items that we're going to talk about here in regards to the fit and finish on the boat. So let's jump on the outside here and wrap everything up. All right, guys, I hope this has been really helpful and that seeing the direct comparisons between these three boats behind me have given you a better idea of what the terms fit and finish means. This will particularly be helpful the next time you're in a boat dealership looking at a new boat. If the sales guy you're talking to brings up the term fit and finish, you're going to know an idea of what he actually is talking about, or probably rather what he should be talking about instead of whatever other fluff terms he's trying to use in order to communicate a point. But the idea behind it is this. The higher the quality of the fit and finish, the nicer the boat is. And this translates to a number of different things. Number one is it's going to be longer lasting. Number two, it's going to just hold together nicer, and it's not going to rattle, it's not going to creak, it's not going to flex and move quite as much. The other benefit you have with fit and finish is just going to look nicer over time. When you have higher quality interiors, they don't look as beat up or torn apart or things of that nature. You're going to replace less seat skins or need to do less work on the upholstery or stitching or anything like that down the road. It's going to lead to a higher resale value into your boat, having a higher perceived value moving forward into the future. As well as there's just something about having a nicer product that you're going to spend a lot of time in when you're out on the boat with your family and with your friends. Having a boat that is nicer and just feels more comfortable, more plush, that holds up better, it just makes it so that you just feel better about your entire experience out on the water. None of these things we're talking about are going to influence the amount of fun you're going to have behind the boat. And that's a whole different discussion that we can get into. But the way that a boat is put together and how nice it is on the interior and the quality of the craftsmanship that goes into them is definitely a thing to consider when you're looking at different boats. If you'd like more information about this, feel free to please subscribe on YouTube. Check out our other videos that we have and the other information we have on our website, boardcoboats.com, as well as please reach out to us. Let us know how we can help. We're always here to be able to answer questions, to be able to help direct you with things, as well as be a great spot if you're looking to upgrade your boat or to get a new one or get your very first boat. We're here to answer your questions and help you every step along the way. Once again, this is Mitch from Boardco. Thanks for spending some time with us, and we'll talk to you later.